Hey guys, this is Future Brian here. Just to give you a warning, if you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking, hey, this kind of sounds like it's all choppy and bad audio, and what is going on? Well, I'll tell you what's going on. Matt and I were actually together in the same room for the first time doing the podcast. We were Zooming our guest, Andrew, which was fun, but at the same time, it brought a lot of technical difficulties. It really did. So that's why audio was cutting out and there were weird echoes. And it was really a lot of editing I had to do to make it even a little bit coherent. A little ways into the episode, we kind of figured out how to do it without it having all these issues. So just bear with us. A little ways into it, it'll be markedly better. And then hopefully next time when we have our next guest, we will figure that out and not have all the same technical difficulties. So bear with us and enjoy.
Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? And it's time for TV Guys. And guess what, guys? The real crime would be to not watch the show. I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Andrew.
And we are talking about crime shows. And if you are not going to listen to our podcast, then that, removes glasses, is a crime. Yeah!
So Matt asked me before, would it be too hard to add the sound effect in, which I was going to, and then he went and did it anyways. Also, you realize the first time you said we should watch the podcast?
Did I?
Yep.
But you gotta watch yourself, guys. You gotta watch yourself. Hey, we have a special guest star who I have not let talk yet because I'm busy focusing on me. But Andrew, you are both a faithful listener of My Movies on a Monday podcast and, of course, our TV Guys podcast. You helped get us onto Spotify in the first place. You're a lot of fun, even if you are a Green Bay Packers fan. But I want to hear, what are some of the best shows to you? Give us a little bit about you.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Matt. Long-time listener, first-time caller, big fan of the show. Yeah, some of my favorite TV shows are Community. Just listen to the Community episode. It's one of my faves. My wife and I just finished watching Chuck all the way through. One of the shows I just finished watching, I'm going to mention a little bit, so we'll leave that for the listener's imagination. And I'm a big fan of the Parks and Rec over The Office. So didn't want to ruffle any feathers right away, but that's just how it is.
Actually, on my official 2020 rankings, I think I've mentioned a few times, I have a full ranking of all the shows I like, and I reevaluate every year. This year, Parks and Rec did edge out The Office for the number one spot.
Nice.
I can't, if there's a show that The Office would lose that title to, Parks and Rec is definitely the worthy successor. They've got some tremendous characters. Office is too classic for me, though. It's where I fell in love with the mockumentary style of television. So, Andrew, also real quick, tell us why, because you were the one who came up with this idea for this topic. So we got this topic because of Andrew, which is awesome. So give us a little bit, what made you be like, oh, crime shows, we should talk about that. Is there anything that kind of sparked your thought there?
Well, being an avid TV Guys listener, I just realized that was an avenue that you guys hadn't really dived into yet, or diving into, whatever your vocabulary. All right, whatever, and I just thought that it would be a great thing to talk about. I feel like, and as we talked about pre-podcast, I think that crime can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people in terms of television and sort of how it's portrayed. And at least in mine, I think you'll see it play out, or the shows that I came up with, where some of them are a little bit darker and some of them are a little bit more lighthearted. And I think that it'd be really cool to see 3 different perspectives on sort of favorite crime shows and things like that.
That's a great idea. And I would say, so the way that we've got this formatted so that you guys know, we're both going to talk about 2. We're going to talk about what we would say might be our top crime show, then kind of the runner-up that would be worthy of talking about and having a conversation about as well. And for me, I realized, when I was looking at crime shows, I think the reason why I talk about crime shows all that much is I don't watch a lot of crime shows. Andrew, why don't you go ahead and start us off with what would you say is number one, the best?
Oh, man. Okay. So I don't know if this is a show that you guys have seen. It's semi-popular, but I don't think it was super mainstream. It's called White Collar. Okay, so White Collar is a show. The main character is Matt Bomer, and I'm not a person who's a like celebrity crush, right? Like the people I think are very beautiful in this world are like my wife and Matt Bomer. Like he is a beautiful man, and honestly, that's one of the things that drew me to the show because I was like, man, this dude, great looking. And then yeah, so the premise of the show is that Matt Bomer, his character's name is Neil Caffrey. He was this criminal, and he was this famous art forger. He forged a lot of different documents and things like that. Just a very talented artist. And he escapes from prison, and he meets up with this character Peter Burke, who's played by Tim DeKay. I don't know if you guys know who that is. Anyway, so basically, Neil becomes this criminal informant for the FBI. And ends up working with Peter, and they just solve a lot of cases together, and their relationship really just changes a lot over time. You know, they become friends, but also Peter has this thing where he's like, I'm still your boss, still in charge of you, you still have an anklet sort of thing. And yeah, I don't know, it just I like it because yes, it's that crime, and they do a lot of, you know, there's a lot of funny aspects of the show. It's not as maybe hard hitting or as serious as something like Criminal Minds would be for the most part. Um, but yeah, I just love it. And like I said, you're looking at a beautiful man in Matt Bomer, and actually the main detective Peter, his wife is Tiffany Dyson, Kelly Kapowski.
Tiffany Amber Thiessen.
Yeah, from Saved
Yeah.
by the Bell. So I was like, well, nostalgia.
Yeah, which Matt doesn't know because he doesn't watch good shows from the 90s.
Fine. Be that way, guys.
But yeah, so that show ran for 6 seasons. By far my favorite crime show. And I mean, if you guys haven't seen it, there's probably not too much dialogue, but
That's cool. That sounds like a cool show. And I didn't realize that Tiffany Amber Thiessen was in. I kind of figured that she wasn't in much between Saved by the Bell. I know she's in the new Saved by the
Mhm.
Bell.
yeah, she's on it the entire time, plays a huge role.
Nice.
Yeah,
And she actually like plays like a serious role and stuff.
yeah, she's the wife of this detective, so she's pretty serious, stoic. Obviously has her funny moments, but the first time I watched it, I was like, wait, is that Kelly? You know, because she looks grown up and like a full sized woman, you know, and so it's full size, full grown. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, let's be real. She was a full size woman on Saved by the Bell. She was definitely not a teenager when on that
Right.
show. But yeah,
Guys, I'm sorry, we can't do fat shaming on our show. All right, so let's stop talking about people as a full
Yeah,
size.
Sorry.
We can do that. No, we always bring up Chuck in all of our episodes, or at least we went through a stretch where we did, like Bryce Larkin on
Right,
that.
yeah, big Bryce Larkin fan.
which by the way, did you rewatch Chuck or watch Chuck because we mentioned it in the podcast?
I gotta say, yeah, man, for sure.
So is that 4 people now who've gotten back into Chuck because of you mentioning it, Matt?
I think so.
Hey guys, this is Brian again here. This is the point where all the technical difficulties just went haywire to the next level. So the next little bit ended up getting cut off. So that's why it's going to be an abrupt change. But at this point, this is kind of where we figure things out, and it should be a smoother listen from here on out. So the reason I don't really, do a lot of episodic television is because it can be really monotonous. Like, okay, you get the bad guy, you catch him, and then there's fine at the end. But I like shows that have that, but they also have ongoing storylines. And when you can really do that with the team, and a show that really does this really well is Criminal Minds, because there's just that group of people. Even though there's some changes, for a big chunk of the show, it's like all the same cast. And then like the last 4 or 5 seasons, they have a lot of changes, but you really get to see them grow and evolve through all this stuff. Like one of the biggest moments is when Hodge's wife died. So Aaron Hotchner, the leader of the team for most of the series, his wife was being kidnapped and held at gunpoint by like the bad guy of the week, who ended up being an ongoing bad guy, I believe. And even their son was there, and he over the phone was on the speakerphone, and the whole team was in different cars racing, so everyone could hear what was going on. And Hodge over the phone said like this code. He told his son, "Help me work on a case," which is his code for "go leave the room." And then the guy like shoots his wife. Like, you don't think it's going to actually happen. You think they're going to bust in and save her, but no. Him and the whole team gets to see his wife getting shot. Has to hear his wife getting shot, and it's just this devastating, real dark moment where it's like, okay, this show goes dark, but not this dark, and it's just really intense.
That was like, okay, so just from behind the scenes here, we've just had a little bit of technical issues as we were recording, and that was actually the second time that Brian said that. And you said it like the same exact way as the first time. I'm like, if I had to repeat myself, I'd be completely different, like all over the board.
I think the illusion is just shattering.
It is. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, no, I love that Criminal Minds does that. I think, Spencer turns into this sort of mature adult throughout the series. I think, he doesn't just say the same, he really does. I think his character's development is probably the best, if not one of the best on the show.
I'd agree with that. I talked about a few weeks ago how like Spencer gets put through the ringer. Like I don't think anybody has as much consistent tragedy as Spencer.
Right, yeah, no doubt. And like the pills that like he may or may not take, and his mom going through all that crap, it's crazy. But he perseveres. He gets kidnapped at one point. Like, jeez.
Well, everyone gets kidnapped at some point.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's good TV.
Yeah. Like once a season, one of the main characters gets kidnapped and they all have to try to race to save him. I can think of times for almost all the main characters.
Mm-hmm.
I have to agree with you though about like episodic TV, because I mean there was a place for it back when cable was bigger than it is now, and you didn't really binge shows. That you didn't want to come into a show and be like, I know nothing about this. I mean, like that's why back in the '60s, all these shows like The Brady Bunch, hey, here's the theme song, so you know exactly what you're getting into with this show. So I mean, I get the need for it, but you're right. Like sometime in the '90s, and I think that like one of the first shows that even did this well was X-Files. That they started this idea of like continuing these arcs through these more like primetime shows, and like they did that with what was it, Scully's pregnancy and whatever that was, I think like at the end of the second season. And so, they, ever since then, we've started to see more and more shows adopt this. And then even like some of those other procedural shows like CSI, I remember like CSI New York, that it really tried to have more continuing arcs, whereas the original CSI and CSI Miami in the first seasons really didn't.
So on this nature of like episodic, this is insane. And to add to the effect, I'm not going to tell you guys what show I'm going to talk about at first. I was listening to some behind the scenes of a certain show, and there was a lot of like I think at one point when they were developing the show in the beginning, the network was like, well, this is going to be like episodic, right? You could be able to skip episodes and it should be fine. And they were like, yeah, totally. You don't need to watch every episode. You know what show that was?
Lost.
Yeah, Lost.
Oh my gosh.
It was.
That's fair.
It's like you could not like. I could think of like one episode of Lost you could skip and it'd be fine, which is Across the Sea, where it's like Jacob's backstory. Other than that, like
of course.
You don't get to skip Lost. You'd be totally lost.
Like that guy. All right. Well, hey, I am also going to break the rules. So when I looked up, because, I don't watch a lot of crime shows, so I'm like, okay, what are some shows that maybe I've watched before I'm just not thinking of? And so I looked up, like, what are other lists? What do they say are the best crime shows, and see if there's anything that rings a bell. And I mean, like, I was glad Brooklyn Nine-Nine came up. I'm like, hey, I could talk about that but we talked about that to death, so I won't bring that up. But my number one was on there, and it wasn't that procedural show, but it's Breaking Bad, and that is one of the best shows, period. It's such a good show. And you talked about this Spencer guy from Criminal Minds, where it's like, as soon as you were talking about him and all the stuff he went through, it just made me think of the character of Jesse, because the whole show revolves around Walter White. But Jesse is such a great character that, especially in the second season, he really has so many low points. It's like he just keeps getting beat up on and attacked. And like Walter is like, hey, I'm going to call you when it's time for me to call you. I have to worry about me. And like no one's taking care of Jesse. And you just feel so bad for him. And like it kind of starts off where he's like that flippant, like druggy kid. And you might not be so much like, oh, I want to relate with him. But they really bring you around to it, and he becomes the heart of the show, whereas as Walter loses his humanity. But it's such a well-done show. I've talked about this so many times of how good Breaking Bad is and how it really surprised me that they do great cliffhangers between episodes. They have really good arcs. Every single character just has tremendous arc that
Mm-hmm.
even Skylar, I'd say is probably one of the weaker characters on there.
Mm-hmm.
But even her, you see like this arc, especially in the third season with her as she try not to give away stuff for people who haven't seen it, but she does become aware of what Walter's doing behind the scenes, and how she deals with it at first is like, oh, poor you. And then like you start to see her get corrupted by Walter, even though she's like trying to distance herself from him. And it's really interesting, the arc that she goes through. So the show is just fantastic. It's the best, some of the best writing I've ever seen. The episode in the final season, Ozymandias, has some of the best acting I've ever seen, period. And in fact, there's a phone call at the end of that Bryan Cranston is making. If you're familiar with the episode, he makes this phone call and he has to kind of deliver 3 different emotions over the phone because he's supposed to be acting a certain way, but his character is feeling a completely different way than what he's acting. And either it was like an open letter or he had called him, but Anthony Hopkins like contacted Bryan Cranston and was like, this is some of the greatest acting I've ever seen. And I have to agree. It was just phenomenal. This show is high quality.
Yeah. And I didn't realize we were trying to not spoil Breaking Bad. So I was going to talk about at the end what Walter did to eventually like take care and save Jesse, which is a huge spoiler, but that's the kind of thing where it's kind of too little too late. But at the very end of the show, he does save Jesse in a really intense, clever, intense way. I don't say intense twice, but I couldn't think of a third word.
It's so intense. He must be camping. Hey, you guys hear about the fire at the circus?
I can't steal Dan's joke.
It's not his joke. Just because he says it all the time, he did not come up with that. I guarantee it.
But he might listen to this podcast.
He might. Yeah, he might. I think he's contacted.
Fire at the circus. I'm trying to think.
It was intense.
Oh, okay. I was thinking of something a little more highbrow. I didn't realize it was the same punchline.
It's my brother-in-law's brother who would say this joke all the time.
All the time. And he had a great deadpan delivery of it too. He's a really funny guy. Although I hope he doesn't watch because I don't want to tell him that.
Again with the watching. This is an audio podcast.
I don't know. I'm used to the government watching us, okay? They can see us. They hacked us.
Why are they gonna watch us?
Because I'm really interesting and I'm cute.
I think that getting back to the meat and potatoes of the podcast here, I just think that Breaking Bad really, the writing is great, but I think one of the things that really drew me in was the first time I watched it, I got it surface level, and then I watched it again. And I think for me, it's not a show that you want to keep watching like The Office, because you're like, wow, this is super dark and twisted.
Oh yeah.
And you're not like, oh yeah, I love this. I love seeing a depressed man and all this stuff. But I think that just all the hidden layers to the show are what really make it great, like you said. And how, I won't spoil it, but how Gus dies, like those couple episodes are like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And then it finally happens and you're like, wow, it's awesome.
I like that moment too of the aftermath because it's like up until that point, always in the series, there was like someone who you would say, quote unquote, was worse than Walter. So you were able to, you might not have rooted for him, but you might have been like, well, I hope he succeeds versus this other guy who's worse.
Yeah. And
then once Gus is gone, it's just him. And you're like, oh, I was rooting for this guy. What's wrong with me?
Yeah. And Gus is also great because I think there's only a couple times in the whole series where he raised his voice. And he's able to be so intimidating and so creepy when he just talks very calmly all the time, just like this, but it's so scary.
Or doesn't even talk, like that episode Box Cutter at the beginning of one of the seasons. Oh, yeah. And Walter is like, he thinks he's going to die from Gus. Gus has got him, over a barrel, and Gus is not saying anything. And Walter just keeps saying stuff and like just trying to get a reaction out of him. Not like a negative, but it's like trying to apologize and see, did he get through to Gus at any point? And then something else happens. You're like, oh, holy crap. It was such a great character moment. And he didn't have to say a word.
Yeah. I mean, Breaking Bad isn't a crime show in the sense of like some of these other ones, but it's I don't think you could call it not a crime show because it's all about meth.
Yeah. Wait, that's a crime?
You know
I
what?
got to make some phone calls.
If people are listening to this in like 2062, maybe not. I don't know how laws are going to change, but
It's a giant meth, you know.
All right. Well, those are our top shows. Let's talk about a couple other ones that wouldn't maybe make the cut, but are still really good. We appreciate. So, Andrew, you started us off with your top. What's another one you want to talk about?
Yeah, so actually, I'm really glad you said Breaking Bad because I have a show that's really similar to that, and it's Ozark. I don't know if you guys have seen that one.
I've heard about it. It's on my list to watch.
It's been on my list for so long. I'm like, I want to watch it, and I never do.
All right, so tell us about Ozark.
All right, well, man, I'm 0 for 2 with you guys tonight, but
That's all right.
yeah, so Ozark is it has a Breaking Bad vibe in the way that it's super dark, and there's always something bad happening to the characters. I would compare Jason Bateman in that show to Walter White. His character is basically they're laundering money for the cartel. And there's constantly bad things happening to him and his family. They end up having to move to Ozark, which is in Missouri. They live in Chicago. And basically the series, it's not really a spoiler. So spoiler, I guess, but
Yeah.
the series starts with his partner getting killed by the cartel. And that's just kind of the catalyst, the catalyzing, the driving moment behind a big, I guess, unfortunate series of events. And so there's 3 seasons out. And it's kind of like Breaking Bad in the sense that the episode ends and then you can't hit that next button quick enough. You just want to see the next episode. It does a great job at really leaving the last episode on a cliffhanger and just make you beg for more kind of thing. Which I love. The last couple of shows that I've watched I've been able to watch the entire series at once and then be done with it. And so this is kind of a weird medium for me right now because I'm like, man, like I'm excited for more show, but I just want it now, you know?
Yeah. I can see Jason Bateman being that because I know he's been in a lot of comedies like in Arrested Development and all that, but he always has that like that dry, like I don't care what's going on, that like sarcastic humor. Even when he was in that Thunder movie with Melissa McCarthy, he kind of still has that dry. That dryness to him, so I can see that translating really well to a serious Walter White kind of role.
Did you ever watch the movie
sure.
The Gift?
No,
It's that's a movie that it's
Yes,
a more
I did
serious
actually.
one. That it's got him and Joel Edgerton, and Joel Edgerton was like this guy in high school that Jason Bateman kind of bullied, and then they bump into each other as adults, and it's kind of like got this creepy vibe of like, you know, how much has this kid changed, or did the bullying like really turn him into someone that's it's really well done, and it's like Jason Bateman like being in a very serious role, and you know he does a great job, and I've always thought he's a good actor, so I've heard the comparison that you were saying with this and Breaking Bad. Some people that I've read articles about or reviews that they've kind of said that one of their frustrations with Ozark though is that the characters tend to make like bad choice, like stupid decisions that blow back on themselves. Where I feel like Breaking Bad, they made some smart decisions for being in the situation that they were in. Is that kind of a fair assessment? Would you say?
I would say for the most part, yes, but also it almost the decisions make sense for who the characters are.
Sure.
Where the town of Ozark, a lot of the people are like very, I guess you would call like hick. One of the main families lives in like a trailer or like 2 trailers. And so they're kind of like lower education. And so some of the choices that they make are like, yeah, that's really stupid, but it kind of lines up with who you are as a person, if that makes sense. And like, you were raised a certain way, so you're probably going to make this decision because their dad's in jail and, you know, they just have a lower education level. And so, yes, they're dumb decisions, but ultimately it makes sense for who they are as people.
It's good.
yeah.
All right. Well, you've convinced me to continue to keep it on my list and then probably watch it in 7 years or some crap like that.
Well, actually, speaking of Breaking Bad, I'm halfway through Better Call Saul. I started that show, not halfway through the first season. And so maybe after Better Call Saul, it'll be Ozark next.
Better watch Ozark. There you go.
All right.
I'm in the middle of the show I'm going to talk about after Brian talks, because I started one when you're like, oh, let's do crime shows. I'm like, well, now's a good time to watch this show I put off for a million years, and boy, did it not disappoint.
All right, my second one is a show from the early 2000s, and I kind of going against everything I said. I said I don't like episodic television, but you can't, and you got to just love and lean into the cheesiness of David Caruso as Horatio Kane in CSI Miami, because I feel like he started, or is the iconic version of that genre of setup, punchline.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I sound like the little miniature Dr. Pepper guy. Yeah.
Man, I know you asked me to. I'm not going to put in the sound effects because yours are way better.
Oh, great. Okay, that's fine.
You made me be a saxophone when we talked about TV theme songs.
I did.
So now this is, but that show has got so many great characters, like the Callie, the southern girl, the southern detective. She is just so interesting because she's got that whole, I don't take crap from anybody. No one messes with me. I know what I'm doing. And it's weird that the comparison I just thought of was Sandy from SpongeBob.
Okay.
I'll take it.
Yeah, and then you got Delco, who actually went on to be in Criminal Minds later. He's got like the second. I don't know if he's the second in command, but kind of had that vibe, like the cool guy who's like the tough cop, and then he also makes dumb decisions too. And it's just, I really like the old guy played by Rex Lynn, who's like this like an old school lieutenant. At one point, he's on a computer, and he's like, it's not even that long ago. It's not like in the 50s. He's like, oh, computers, I hunt and I peck, and you better just be okay with that because I do things the old school way. And it's just all their characters are just so fleshed out, and they're so different. They're not like cookie cutter cops. So even though they're dealing with cheesy lines and cheesy stories, like it's just fun to watch. It's like watching the Muppets solve crimes.
What a comparison!
Wow.
There really
highbrow stuff right there.
There really is the cheesiness of Caruso, but like that's what you love. And like he takes himself so seriously. Like this show would be so much worse if it wasn't for David Caruso. Like I'm going to eat the scenery chew the scenery of every single scene I'm in, and his voice, like he talks like this, like he just walked out of a Western.
That's one of those shows that I've seen like 11 episodes of, and every one was just kind of after a football game or something it was on, and I'm like, yeah, this is on, but it's something that I haven't gotten into, but definitely be interested in hearing the deep voice. So
yeah, well, I was into it a long time ago, probably when it was airing towards the later seasons. I followed it for probably a good half of the run of the show. And I haven't seen it a whole lot since. This has been a busy week for me, so I haven't really had a chance to go. I was going to look up some YouTube clips. I didn't get a chance to do that, but I just remember all you really need to know about Criminal Minds, about CSI Miami is just that opening line of David Caruso. He takes off his glasses, and then I'll do it this time. And then,
thank you. Rest my voice.
All the different characters. It is all those things I just mentioned. All those characters. I haven't seen the show in probably years. But those things stick in my mind because they're so unique, which I like about the show.
I think, Andrew, what would be fun for you is just watch a supercut of David Caruso lines and like just line after line after line. That's what makes it funny. You're like, oh my gosh, he really is. He commits.
I guarantee there's got to be one of those up there.
I've seen one. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
And that extends for all of you guys too. If you want a good couple of minutes, go find a super cut of CSI Miami openings, and you'll love it.
And girls too, because I'm not sexist like Matt.
Oh,
just staring at him, just so that you guys know. Since apparently we don't watch podcasts, whatever. It's a load of crap. All right, what was I? Oh yeah, so show that I was wanted to bring up. I've watched. Okay, here's the problem with crime shows for me is that like they get into some dark stuff, and if you binge a crime show, that can be really hard. You can be like, I am so depressed, and now you walk out the door and like everyone here wants to kill me. But I watched about 5 or 6 episodes or no, 6 or 7 episodes. So I almost got through the first season. I've heard more about this, so I know I'm premature in talking about it because I haven't watched all the way through. But the show True Detective came out a couple years ago, and it's one of those shows that every season they do a new case and they have new performers. But that first season, like, it really took people by surprise, where it's got Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson as the two cops together. And Matthew McConaughey is like this nihilist, like nothing matters. I've seen stuff. And so because of that, like every person is this sort of way. And, like he tries to be like he has a negative view, but he also tries not to put that negative view on other people, like how House does. He's not like that. He just has like you're not going to convince me that the world's a good place. You're just not. And then you got Woody Harrelson, who he's a very conflicted person, but he does have hope and he does have belief. And like, he's got certain things that set him off too throughout the episodes that we're watching, where it's like anything that has to do with kids or like underage girls or whatever, that really sets him off. And so you kind of get these two, but in the first episode, as soon as they have like one of their first conversations where Woody Harrelson's like, you need to talk more. And then Matthew McConaughey does he pretty much does one of those Lincoln commercials where he's like, he's driving and he gives like his thoughts, but it's like all really dark and like, time's a flat circle and you're always going to be back to the same place you were and you can never escape it. And like, dude, just take a Xanax, calm down. Yeah. And so, after he does like one of those little spiels, then Woody Harrelson's like, you know what? I take it back. I don't want you talking. I don't want you saying that crap when we're out with people. Okay. So their dynamic works really well. And the mystery that they have is really unique. And like, halfway through the first season, you feel like maybe that they didn't solve the case, but there's like this natural point where they think that they solved it. And there's like, wait, there's actually more, there's something else going on here. And it's also told in like a couple different storyline or a couple different timelines. You've got Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey kind of giving their statement like all these years later. And then the actual case and murder happened mid-90s or late 90s. And then there was some other stuff that happened to them in the mid-2000s. So it'll kind of like jump between those and like give you a little bit more information about, what's going on. So at first it's maybe a little jarring of like, wait, which timeline are we in right now? But it really comes together well. I've heard it kind of the second season, it dips off with Vince Vaughn and I'm blanking on who the other guy was. Then third season gets Mahershala Ali, and that it kind of goes back up to higher quality. But that first season so far is really, really good. I'm interested to see. I'm like one episode away from the ending of this season, so I don't know even how that ends. But that really intrigued me, and I just wanted to bring it up because we haven't talked about it, and I finally got to watch it. So yay!
Proud of you.
Do they change the whole cast every season?
Yeah, because it's like it's similar to I don't know what I'm thinking.
American Idol.
Sure, it's similar to American Idol. I watched True Detective. I'm like, this is just like American Idol the entire time.
Simon Cowell pops up every year, but otherwise it's good.
Yeah. Or like a Survivor, Jeff Probst is always there, but it's a new cast every time.
Yep. Hey, I am really surprised, actually, Andrew, that you did not bring up Psych. Because I've seen like 3 or 4 seasons of Psych. It's a good show. It's a lot of fun. It didn't like grab me to be like, I need to finish all of it. But I really enjoy their dynamic back and forth.
Yeah, I did have a couple honorable mentions. I didn't know if we were going to have time for them, but Psych was on there. Brooklyn Nine-Nine also.
Yeah.
But yeah, Psych is one of those shows where I think it's very culty, like a cult classic where, it's kind of like Community, the whole 6 seasons in a movie. Like, when Psych was done, people were devastated, and it was just this whole thing, and they actually brought it back for a movie type thing. It was just a longer episode. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's a great show. I love Psych. I've probably watched it 10 times.
They have some really good casting of the 2 main guys, and then the detective who's kind of like they do a good job with him being dumb, but not like caricature dumb, which some other shows get into.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Did you guys have any honorable?
Yeah, I was trying to think of what else.
All right, I got one.
part.
I really like this Sherlock series on BBC.
Oh yeah, I watched some of that too. Yeah.
Yeah, both of those guys are really well done. It's like any version of Sherlock, it's really cool to see where they go with it. Even if they give him emotions and you get sued, looking at you, Enola Holmes from Netflix. Apparently, you can't have emotions for Sherlock. What the crap? But this was a great interpretation. I really enjoyed Martin Freeman and Benedict Cumberbatch's their back and forth. Very witty, and then also the stories were really smart too.
Yeah. I think the only one I could think of for an honorable mention would be Scorpion, which wasn't exactly a crime show, but it kind of was along that same line. Did you ever watch that, Andrew?
Dude, I loved Scorpion, man. I watched first 2 seasons for sure.
Okay, I don't know if you listened. We talked about this when we talked about the worst endings, but that show ended with the team broken up, and they're like, "Well, I guess we're not coming back, so that's it." They're just broken up, which just sucked. But other than that, they did a really good job of just having the different character dynamics and just building tension between all of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt.
I'm also going to shout out, like, I don't watch any of these, but I know that there's people who watch these, but there's like this huge resurgence of crime documentaries, like How to Make a Murder and like those sorts of things. Do you guys watch any of those?
I haven't watched a ton of them. I've seen some of those.
Yeah,
So-
I've heard the Ted Bundy tapes are really interesting. Haven't gotten around to them though.
So we're all in the same boat. That's why they're not on our list, guys. We don't watch them. If you watch any of those and you are like, hey, check these out, you'll be really depressed and not sleep for a week, but it's good, then let us know.
We won't watch them, but we'll tell other people to watch them.
We'll tell you guys. Go watch them now. Turn everything off. Stop watching the podcast with your ears.
So is that all we got?
That's all we got.
So Andrew, did you come up with a trivia question?
I did. If it's lame, you guys can do a different one. But I was just thinking about
Well, first let's go with answer the trivia from last week.
Oh yeah. We figured it out.
We're super professional. We forgot what the trivia question was. We had to go back and look at the recording, which isn't even up yet. So we talked about one of the things we talked about briefly last week when we were talking about life coaches was the show Cobra Kai. And we said, what TV show had both Ralph Macchio and William Zabka come back for guest appearances to kind of, as themselves, rekindle their rivalry? And that show was...
Andrew?
I have no idea.
Wrong. It was actually How I Met Your Mother.
Mm-hmm. So it's a running gag that Barney always, on How I Met Your Mother, rooted for the villains of everything. He always thought the villains were the good guy. And so he had this whole list of what he would want as the perfect bachelor party. And it was actually a good bait and switch. They gave him everything, but throughout the way they framed it and tried to trick him into thinking that they were getting everything wrong. To the point where they actually invited Ralph Macchio to his bachelor party. And he's like, no, I hate Ralph Macchio.
He's not the real Karate Kid.
And throughout this whole time, there's this clown that's been there. And then as he says that, the clown just stops and talks. He's like, I couldn't agree with you more. And he wipes off all the clown makeup. And it's William Zabka. And he rips off... I just ripped off our earbuds. He rips off the clown uniform, and he's wearing the Cobra Kai uniform, and he's like, William Zabka's here! And they had this back and forth, and they kind of paint Ralph Macchio to be kind of a jerk. And it was just shortly after that Cobra Kai became a thing. So it was like, it has to be somewhat related. So that was... that's the answer to last week's trivia.
Yeah, there's no way that did not influence the creation of Cobra Kai. So this week's trivia, we've got it. Andrew, it's going to be great. And if it's not, we're coming towards you.
Coming towards me. Drive down from Wilmer.
Yep.
Yeah. So my trivia question is, there have been a lot of seasons of Criminal Minds. It just wrapped up its final season. And my trivia question is, how many seasons of Criminal Minds have there been?
2, 1, 1.5.
I know this one.
I think I might be incorrect with my 3 guesses.
3, 2,
I'll give you
2, 1, and 1.5.
It's less than Grey's Anatomy. So,
and Simpsons then.
And Sesame Street.
Yep.
Sesame Street. What other freaking long depth? Gosh. All right.
Jeopardy's been going on a long time.
There you go. Jeopardy is a good.
The
Any
douche.
any soap opera or game show, those are on there too. Well, hey Andrew, it was great having you on. You are a lot of fun. You were natural at this. This was what you told us earlier. This is your first podcast that you've appeared on, and you would not have been able to tell. You just flowed seamlessly with us. It was a lot of fun.
Especially since we had a lot of technical difficulties on our end.
Oh yeah,
Your end was fine.
yeah. You're the only thing that worked right. So thank you for doing that.
Talk about what we're doing next week.
Yeah, and I didn't start off and say this, but this is special guest month. So I'm sorry that I forgot to say that at the beginning, but Andrew kicked off special guest month. We're going to have more special guests throughout this month. So you got a 3-man podcast for the month of June. We got our buddy Mike coming on, and we're going to talk about some of the best and worst replacement of casting. So when they changed cast members, when did they do that well? To play the same person. When did they do that well? When did they do that poorly? And we'll have a better way to say that as a title when we do it. So I got a week to think.
Yeah, so next week we'll be back with Mike to talk about that.
And that's it. So thanks again for listening. Until next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Andrew.
And we remind you to stay tuned and keep watching. Yeah!
Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do.